Chapter 1. The dawn choristers completed their rowdy ovation to the new day as the Brentford Mercury's driver tossed his first Friday bundle in the general direction of a corner shop doorstep. On high Olympus, the fates, nodding in agreement across their breakfast ambrosia, declared the day officially begun. Norman hoisted the bundle of weekly locals onto the worm-eaten countertop, where it struck with an appropriately dull thud and raised a glorious cloud of dust. The shopkeeper sighed with pleasure. Since the departure of his wife with the former editor of the borough's organ, he had allowed the business to run magnificently to seed. His dust was the envy of every married man in the neighbourhood, and Norman, revelling in each new pleasure afforded to him by his unexpected return to bachelorhood, was living, as he considered it, life to the full. Upstairs, last week's underpants loaded it upon the bedside rug. Today's sartorial excesses stretched to a pair of odd and undone socks and the garish Hawaiian shirt his wife had particularly hated. Norman had also recently cultivated a pair of ludicrous mutton chop whiskers, which he considered to be rather dashing. "It's not a bad old life if you don't weaken," he constantly informed his customers, adding guardedly that this was, of course, dependent upon not letting those born out of wedlock, whoever they were, grind you down. Whistling tunelessly between teeth of his own design and construction, Norman slid the blade of his reproduction sword of border paper knife through the twine bindings and spread away the pink covering to expose the front page news. There was always more than the merest hint of ceremony about this weekly routine, something vaguely akin to the mystical, although performed subconsciously and without the solemnity generally accorded to ritual. But such was often the way of it in Brentford. Certain customs appear to have acquired almost magical significance. Professor Slocum's dawn perambulation of the borough boundaries, for example, or Neville the part-time barman's daily check of the Swan's beer engines. Such things were part of the vital stuff of Brentford and a contributing factor towards the town's separateness from its neighbours. Brentford lacked the cosmopolitanism of Hounslow, the upward mobility of Ealing, the young professionalism of Chiswick, and the aloof urbanity of Kew. It should not be surprising, therefore, to note that the initials of these surrounding territories spelled out the word heck, the 19th century euphemism for hell. Norman flung the length of knotted twine into an overflowing rubbish box beneath the counter, leant upon the threadbare elbows of his ragged shop coat, and took stock of the week's doings. The headline was not slow to engage his attention. "Invisible Mr. King Church Hall Rumpus," ran the generously inked banner headline, filling a third of the front page. "Guru vanishes with the takings as fish fly." Norman chuckled to himself as he read the account of how local warlock and self-styled miracle worker Hugo Roon, having failed to make good his promise to dematerialise before a capacity crowd, had performed an entirely different variety of vanishing act when the dissatisfied punters turned ugly and demanded the return of their money. Fearing possible damage to the Jacobean timbers of the newly restored church hall, Father Moiety had telephoned for the police. During the ensuing punch-up, there had been 12 arrests, and the local constabulary were currently seeking the whereabouts of the perfect master. Norman shook his head and turned the page. "Birmingham's Olympic hopes go up in smoke. Stadium fire ends drums Olympic dreams." Of course, Norman had heard all of this on the wireless set. The grim catalogue of mismanagement, bungling, inefficiency and chaos had been daily news for months. As David Coleman had said, "The final kiss goodbye has long been on the cards." "Shame," said Norman to no one but himself. "I thought I'd have a crack at the javelin." On a lower portion of the same page was an item that any other editor might well have considered to be front-page news. "Gold bullion robbery. Thieves net largest ever haul in the crime of the century." Norman whistled once more through his homemade railings as he read the figure. Even allowing for the exaggeration of the Mercury's cub reporter Scoop Malloy, there seemed to be little doubt that this was, as the Sweeney's now legendary Gav would have put it, "one big blag, George." Exactly how the robbery had been carried out was still something of a mystery, and Norman marvelled at the ingenuity of the light-fingered gentry who had slipped unseen through the high-security cordon to abscond with the many tons of golden booty. Norman counted up the rows of notes and tried to reconcile them into hundreds, thousands and millions. Didn't bear thinking about. A quick flip through the remaining pages disclosed pretty much what he had come to expect. The same tired old stuff, although strangely comforting in its tired old sameness. local fetes and flower shows, a listing of next week's car boot sales, a 3-page tide table, next week's demonstration of the art of levitation called off due to unforeseen circumstances, the council still flogging off portions of wasteland in a vain attempt to make the works balance, Old Sandell, the Mercury's oracle, predicting scandal for the House of Windsor, and a one-eyed Puerto Rican to win the derby. The same old tired old stuff. Shaking his head once more, just for the hell of it, Norman dug a biro from his top pocket and began to number up the papers. An invisible guru, a gold bullion robbery, and aloha to the Brum Olympics, muttered Norman, worth a bit of chit-chatting this one come lunchtime, but hardly likely to change the face of civilization hereabouts. In the light of future events, however, Norman might have done well in discarding this particular remark in favour of something completely different, possibly one of the less cheerful doom prophecies from the Book of Revelation, or a simple, "The end is drawing nigh." But precognition have never been one of Norman's stronger points, for indeed, had he possessed this rare gift to even the slightest degree, he would not now have been unnecessarily numbering up papers which he would shortly be delivering himself. For upon this particular morning, as on several past, Zorro the paper boy had chosen to remain in his cosy bed rather than face the rigours of bag, bike and bull terrier. Thus it was that, with a beef-heartian air upon his lips and the dust setting thickly upon his mutton chops, Norman continued with his task, blissfully unaware that he had just glimpsed the beginning of the end, or if not that, then something which looked very much like it.